It's 11 o'clock Mountain Time on December 6th. Emily Taylor in my studio. I want to today just do a quick follow-up about our 12 Days of Christmas quilt. I had a few questions in the Facebook group about why I recommend, so I'm using a fatter binding, and the fatter binding requires something that is different than a traditional binding. So I've got a little demonstration to share with you. First of all, so this is just I didn't have time to quilt this, so pretend this is your quilt, but it is a quilt sandwich. It's got the front, a back, and batting in between. So it's about an eighth of an inch thick, as most quilts are roughly. You need to account for that. I like this batting that's Hobbs 80/20, so it's very thin batting. So when it's quilted, it's I love the feel of it, the look of it. So with the Christmas quilt, I was using a large fat binding to complement or to be the same width as the sashing. And when you do that, you've got to handle the binding, the corners a little bit differently. So I'm going to start first of all with a traditional width binding, which is normally about a 1/2 inch wide binding. I'm a little, you can be really precise about cutting the width of the binding to 2 5/8 or 2 7/8. It doesn't matter. This binding I cut at 3 inches wide, and I like double folded binding. So this is 3 inches wide, and double fold just means, of course, that I've double folded it. You all are probably aware, you've probably done a traditional binding like this before. So you line up the edge with the edge of your quilt that's been squared. And I've got a 1/4 inch seam along here. And to handle the corners so that we get a really nice mitered corner, let me show you just real quick what the lovely tight mitered corner is going to look like. So if I fold it, when I fold it over and stitch to the back, that's going to be a really perfect square. So I'm going to unstitch this and just show you how to get that. And then on the back, I would hand stitch this so that, and you can see too that as I fold it over, it's nicely folded over on the back as well. And I try and line it up right on that stitch line right there. So let me show you how we get to this point, okay? And then we're going to talk about the wider binding. And if you have any questions as I am doing this, go ahead and type them in the comments, okay? So I'm just going to pull out these last couple of stitches just to show you how I fold this as I go around the corner, okay? I thought this would be the easiest thing to just start going backwards. Okay, let's see if I can get those out. Okay, so here I am. I've stitched my binding up to the corner. Now I'm going to stop because I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to stop a 1/4 inch from the edge. Okay, so that's where I stop. I also just want to recommend too that if you do not have a walking foot, that you invest in a walking foot when you're doing your binding. This a walking foot helps with bulk, a bulkier amount of fabric. So we're not just sewing 2 pieces of fabric together. We have batting in there, which makes it a little thicker. Okay, so when I get to this point, when I get to the edge, I'm a 1/4 inch. I stop my stitching a 1/4 inch, and then I take it off of my machine because I want to make sure that my corners are nice and tidy. I can't stand corners that are messy. And for so many years, I've had messy corners. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold this fabric up so that I have there's that nice 90 degrees here. And it creates that nice 45-degree mitered corner there. And you can I actually like to hold this up to ensure that I'm getting um, that perfect angle. And then I'm going to fold the fabric back down on itself. And here's where kind of the trick comes. So if you find that you're not able to get your perfect mitered corners, that they're not crisp, but that they're kind of bunched in on each other, that's because you're not allowing for enough fabric up in the corner. So the way to kind of judge that is, because I'm using, this will be the finished binding will be a 1/2 inch or close to a 1/2 inch. I want to make sure that this amount of fabric that I have up here from the stitch line to the top of this fold is the width of my binding. So it's a 1/2 inch. So I'm just eyeballing it, and that's how you get it. So if I were doing a slimmer binding, a 1/4 inch binding, I could fold it right on top so that that is perfectly matched. And then I would continue doing my binding. I'd go down a 1/4 inch and stitch there. But because I have a 1/2 inch binding, I want to pull up just a little bit more so that I have a 1/2 inch between here and the fold. And then I'll put this back on the machine and start stitching a 1/4 inch from the top. Well, from the top of the quilt, and then stitch along that line. And that's how you'll get, then when you flip it, you've got the perfect mitered corner. So I wanted to show you what it looks like when you make a mistake so that you know how to fix it, because I've made this mistake a million times and it makes me crazy. So I have to go back and fix it. So here I am with a larger binding. This now is this is going to be, the end binding will be 1.5 inches. So that means I have to cut my fabric, my binding fabric, 6 inches, because I'm doubling it. So it comes down to 3 inches. So because we're dealing with a bigger, a larger binding, we've got to make sure that we make that corner bigger. What happens if you don't? So the way you make traditional quilts, if you're just doing a small 1/4 inch binding or anything under a 1/2 inch, you can just stitch along, do that little, fold it up, make sure it matches, and then bring it back down. But the problem with that is when I go to flip my binding and then try and create a mitered corner, I can't, it's not going to give me that mitered corner. It's going to be, there's just not enough fabric to lay down, and it just gets clunky and messy and rounded, and it doesn't work. So the key with that is to, again, so I've done it on this side. I've prepared the binding. Let me show you. Okay, so we've stitched along, then we take it off the machine when I'm a 1/4 inch away, and then look at the amount of fabric that I have. Look at that. So that is, and that might even be a lot. It looks like a lot, but I think that's 1.5 inches from here to the top of the fold, from the stitch line to the top of the fold. That's 1.5 inches. And then when I go to fold, and then I continue. So once I've got that there, then I'm going to continue stitching down the edge, and then watch this. Now, when I go to fold my binding over, I can get that really lovely corner. See that nice mitered corner? Now, if there's too much bulk in there, I can go in and trim a little bit of that bulk. But it's okay to leave some of that bulk in there too, because you've got a large binding. You need some stiffness in here so it's not just flopping around. So anyway, I just thought that would be I thought that would be helpful, because it's something that I struggled with, and because doing a large binding like this requires just a little bit, it requires a trick. So there you go. There's how you're going to do a fatter binding. And I do recommend that you take a piece of fabric like this, create a quilt sandwich. Whether it's quilted or not, you can just pin it like I've done. But when you're working on a quilt that you've spent a long time on and you're really proud of, you want the binding to turn out just right. So I always recommend having, a piece of fabric that you can test with the thickness of your binding and make sure that the amount that you're folding is going to work out the right way, as I've done here. So I really recommend doing that. And this one, I think it might even be a little bit too much. I might, not have needed that whole amount. I might go a little bit thinner. So anyway, just a little tip for you. I hope that's helpful. Now let me take a look here and see if there are any other questions. Okay, so yeah, that's the tip. Just remember that if you're doing a wider binding than a 1/4 inch, you need to just add a little bit more to work with so you can get that perfect miter. Okay, let's take a peek at the let me take a peek and see our questions, see if we have any questions. Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy that you joined me. It's always so fun to say hello to everybody and see people that hop on often. Okay. Someone said, just another quick thank you for the wonderful 12 Days of Christmas project. This has been the funnest thing for me. I'm so glad that that you all have enjoyed it. And the thing that has delighted me is to see how many people who've never made a collage quilt, who've been very intimidated by a collage quilt, they've jumped in and produced beautiful work. So that was the idea, that this would just be something that you could, there are a variety of blocks so that you have the opportunity to pick and choose if you want. If you don't want to do the harder blocks, you don't have to, but you can have success with some of those simpler blocks if you're just starting out. And so I just want to say too, if you don't want to do some of the more difficult blocks were those blocks that had the ribbons. I think the ribbon was probably the most challenging. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that was super hard, but there were some, various difficulty levels. I think the round ball and that one was very easy. I think the gingerbread man was easy. So go ahead and try some of those if you haven't dived in yet with collage quilting. You'll be surprised at how fun it is. And that's been fun for me to see how many first timers we have. So okay, there are more patterns. Somebody said they tried to order the physical pattern. There should be some in there. I've just ordered more, and I'll double check and make sure that it says that there are some available, because I know we're not sold out. Okay. As somebody said, binding is my nemesis. I know, me too. It's kind of tricky. So that's why I think go ahead and do a little test beforehand to make sure that you're getting the right amount of fabric for that corner. That's the trick, right? Also, and a walking foot. A walking foot is extremely helpful. So I hope those things are helpful. It's great to see you people from all over the world. We've got a couple people from South Africa and from Sweden. Great. British Columbia. Fantastic. Okay, let's see if I have any other oh, in Spain. That's great. Okay. Yeah, so I just want to share with you the way I came up with that to add that little extra amount is trial and error. It's how I do everything. I make mistakes and I am like, oh, I got to fix that. I got to figure that out. And so messing around with it, having a little sample is really super helpful. Okay, so that's that. I don't see any other questions about doing binding or the 12 Days of Christmas quilt. So I want to let you know, wait, we've got a few more coming in, a few more comments. Oh, Deanna said it was very exciting to see such good results with being a beginner. That is very motivating for a new collage quilter. So that's great. And we've got a hello from Belize. So fun. I love it. Okay, well, I want you to know that this is going to be my last live video until the first of the year. I am taking the rest of December. I'm not taking it off, but I am taking it to prepare and work on the upcoming projects that we've got for 2022. And I am ecstatic to share them with you. Somebody just said, what have you done with all your critters you were creating? Well, that's what I'm working on right now. So I'm super, super excited to share what I've got going on with those. I don't know if you can see, I've pulled a few of the critters down as I'm working on them. So anyway, that's fun. Thank you everybody for joining me. Again, I will create an announcement about when I will be live again. It will be the first part of January. I'm looking at my calendar right now. So it'll be probably January 3rd. I'm going to be out of town. Oh, I'm going to the Rose Bowl. My football team, the University of Utah football team, won the Pac-12 championship. And so my voice is a little raspy because I was at the game in Las Vegas, and we're going to go to the game in Pasadena, California. I cannot wait. But we should be back in time for me to do my live video on January 3rd, and we will kick off a wonderful new year. I'm super excited about everything that I have to share with you then, but I've got a lot to do to get ready. So that's why I'm taking the rest of December to just plan, prepare, and get some exciting stuff happening. So have a wonderful Christmas, everybody. I will still be checking in on the Collage Quilter Academy Facebook group, and obviously Collage Quilter. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, don't hesitate to email me, Emily@collagequilter.com. Just know that I do normally take Sundays off always. I don't even check in. And a lot of times I won't be checking in on Saturdays. So I work really hard during the week, try to take the weekends off to be with my family. So if you send me an email on Friday afternoon, there's a really good chance that I won't see it until Monday morning. But now it's Monday morning and I'm going to go answer my emails. So if you have any questions, just holler at me over on my, shoot me an email. Okay, have a wonderful Christmas, you guys. I love you all. Sending my good cheer and best wishes to all of you. And we will see you live next year in a few weeks. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.